I'm back visiting Japan in my wife's hometown, and this is one of my favorite places in the neighborhood to take a walk. It's just a nice little chunk of agricultural fields right in the middle of this medium-sized city in the Kansai region. And it just got me thinking, part of the reason that you see these types of agricultural fields even in urban areas in Japan today is due to the post-war land reforms that were undertaken by the Allied occupation after World War II. And I'm remembering a paper that a professor of mine, Mary McDonald, she's a geographer, she had written. And what those land reforms did is essentially the state mandated that you could not be a big landholder anymore. And so they purchased the holdings of very large landowners because they saw that the tenant farming that had been prevalent prior to the war and for a long chunk of history was really creating rural poverty, and they thought that really led into the imperialist project of Japan as well. And so the state would purchase those lands and made it illegal to hold too many chunks of land, and then they sold it to the tenant farmers for a low fee. And so suddenly you had this large landed farming population across much of rural Japan. And partly what that did is created a political stronghold of conservative farming families for the Liberal Democratic Party, the LDP, that held power for most of the post-war era. And so what's interesting in the article that this professor, Mary McDonald, wrote is that she talks about the way that the political project of the LDP, that support of the landed farmers, had to be balanced against other sorts of economic initiatives. In other words, converting land to other sorts of things, industry in particular. And that's really been a negotiation throughout the post-war period. And so I think we see now that these sorts of areas remain in part because of that ongoing tension of post-war Japan. And of course now the Japanese economy is just sort of sputtering and has been for several decades. And so I think it could be debated how good that project, how it went or how well it was accomplished. But regardless, I'm very glad that we have a lot of these beautiful little plots of agricultural land still, because it just, really makes Japan such a special place.